Doug will be speaking to us from the Competent Communicators Manual. The title of his speech is From Broadway to Mr. Howland's Voice. Thank you.
The Phantom of the Opera, starring Douglas McCall. When I was in high school, that was what I envisioned my future being filled with. My name blazing across the marquee. Up until dawn, sleep until 2, perform for my adoring fans. Funny thing about the future, it doesn't always end up as you would plan. I think John Lennon captured it best when he said, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, most welcome guests, have you ever been absolutely certain of something, only to find out later on down the road that you were completely wrong? For me, that was Broadway. When I was in high school, I was the kid in every performing ensemble, and I do mean every single one. I had rehearsal 8 nights a week. As a matter of fact, I'm really not sure how I graduated because I know I didn't have time for homework. When I applied to the Crane School of Music for my Bachelor of Music in Music Education, it was for something to fall back on if the Broadway thing didn't work out. But that didn't matter because my name was going to be in lights. I learned a very valuable lesson my freshman year at the Crane School of Music. In order to be a performer, you have to practice. And that felt an awful lot like work. Maybe not. So, in the span of an academic year, took my name off the marquee, sent the pit orchestra home, and focused on music education. I was a lackluster undergraduate student. Got through most of my coursework, did my student teaching, and graduated in 4.5 years with my 4-year degree. For the record, in the music education world, that's normal. After my student teaching, I vowed I would never teach middle school. I was horrible. So I substituted for 6 months. My plan was to become a high school chorus teacher, and I applied for every high school chorus job I could find, to no avail. And then one day it happened. I got an interview. The Auburn Enlarged School District wanted to interview me for East Middle School. I didn't even apply to the Auburn School District, and I definitely didn't apply to a middle school. But it was the only interview I had, and it was July, and my mother was eager for me to get gainful employment. So, I became a middle school chorus teacher, not the high school chorus teacher I had planned to be. Thanks, John Lennon. I remember distinctly the week before my first year teaching. I said to my mother, this is for 1 year. 1 year, and I'm done. I'm moving on to something else. The plan was to get a year under my belt and apply for better choral jobs. It was also in my first year that I met Glenn Holland. Glenn Holland is a fictional band teacher in the movie Mr. Holland's Opus. He's a frustrated musician who becomes a music teacher so that he can save up his money for 4 years, quit teaching, and compose for the rest of his life. He stays there for 30 years. I immediately identified with Mr. Holland. So much so that to this day, the day before school starts, I watch Mr. Holland's Opus. Well, as it happens, 1 year became 2. And before you know it, I had 5 years under my belt and my master's in music education from Ithaca College. And I was still in middle school. So much for that plan. In my 6th year, I decided that I was not going to retire from Auburn. I had better things in my future. So I went to SUNY Oswego to get my educational administration degree so that I could be an administrator. The new plan was that I was going to become a director of music, Or maybe even a superintendent, because contrary to my undergraduate degree, I did very well in my advanced studies. I'm actually a pretty good student. So, I finished my internship at the Baldwinsville Central Schools as an administrator, and I went back to Auburn and started applying for jobs. After 7 years, 70 applications, a dozen interviews, nothing, not even one. And my degree was starting to get stale. Again, Lennon? Really? Now, as this interesting twist of fate, maybe Lennon was cutting me a break, I did end up at the high school, but still in Auburn. And my wife and I had the conversation this year about how many years until retirement from Auburn. So, 15 years later, the lights of Broadway have faded, the fans have gone home, and I'm living a life that bears a striking resemblance to that of Glenn Holland. I have truly gone from Broadway to Mr. Holland's opus. As an interesting side note, and a coda to the end of this story, towards the end of Mr. Holland's opus, Glenn Holland sings Beautiful Boy to his deaf son Cole. The last line of the song that he sings is, life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. Mr. Toastmaster.